So good afternoon to all of you. I welcome you to our seminar, and also I welcome our great four speakers. They are known by their organization which they work, but they are also very known by fighting for the Christian persecution, but also working very hard for the persecuted Christian. Before I turn the mic to the speaker, I want just to share with you one or two thoughts. The Middle East, once the cradle of the civilizations and home to one of the world's oldest cultures, such as Aramaic, Babylonian, Sumer, Armenian, etc. It's also the birthplace of the first alphabet, and also the birthplace of the religions like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Once was the Middle East flourished by Judaism and Christianity. Now it has become a place of struggle, of local and international struggling, and also place of proxy war between so-called superpowers. Before I turn to our speaker, I want just to share also a thought with you, especially in the last 20 to 25 years, it's a lot of things happening there. Many wars, and as I said, there are a lot of victims. 100,000 were died, were killed. Millions are displaced. But one is certain, for me at least, the huge and the biggest group who were victims for this war and struggling, and the biggest group who pays the highest price are the Christians. So I will invite as a first speaker Mr. Metin Rhawi to spend the speech. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this opportunity to be here, to stand for the truth and for our Christian communities in the Middle East, in special Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, and obviously all Christian. And I'm also very thankful that you are sitting here, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen. There is something I feel must be said very clearly. There is an elephant in the room, and we have to realize it. According to that, also act. Christians have been persecuted across many parts of the world, of course, from Africa to Middle East, or West Asia, if you would say. Believers are attacked, they are displaced, they are silent because of their faith. Churches are burned, families scattered, and communities forced to hide their identity. Not by fate. This is a deliberate persecution plan. From Nigeria, Islamist groups such as Boko Haram and ISIS-linked militias have turned villages to graveyards. Churches are simply being attacked, priests kidnapped. Thousands of people have been killed simply because they bear the name of Christ. From Sudan where they face restrictions, churches, demolitions, and harassment of converts. We need to see the war of instability, many lives in fear, abandoned by those who are intent to protect them. These tragedies remind us of Christians being persecuted as a global human rights crisis. The same patterns of violence persist. We need to stand, and this requires a demand to unite our forces in a moral response. Across West Asia, or Middle East as people say, in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Turkey, Christian communities face slow erasure of their 2,000-year-old presence. History is not a line, it's a circle. What we ignore today will return as a moral debt to us tomorrow. Our churches lie in ruins, families are scattered, and our children grow up as refugees, not by accident, but through organized persecution. I also would like to greet you from my people's organization in Syria. Actually, one of them were going to attend this meeting and have this speech. Due to the fact he could not receive visa, I jumped in. So, greetings from the Levantine National Council of the Levantine, which is an umbrella organization that's worked for unity and justice and renewal of the Syriac Christianity empowerment in Syria, and the Syriac Union Party in Syria. Both reaffirm their commitment to survival of the Christians and flourishing of the Christian communities as equal citizenships and partners in rebuilding a free, democratic, and pluralistic nation. The Syriac Union Party is also co-founder of the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria, the ANES, exercising political, policing, military capacities to protect Christian communities. Both these organizations stand for the protection and cultural, linguistic, and religious identity, including participation in reconstruction and work for sovereignty of new Syria, where all citizens are equal before the law. We must prevent what happened in Iraq. We cannot let history repeat itself, where extremist militias fractions, fueled and supported by Iran and Turkey, created chaos and targeted Christian population, especially our communities, the Syriac with different denomination. I think it's needed to know who the Syriae are. When we say the Christian of the Middle East, in generally there are two groups, the Armenian and the Syriae. The Syriae goes under the name of Assyrian, Chaldean, Aramean, and Syriacs. So our people, the Syriae, along other Christians in West Asia, have endured systematic persecution over 200 years. The most notorious episode was the genocide committed by the Ottoman Empire during the First World War, known as the Armenian genocide, but in fact, the Syriae, we remember it as the year of the sword, the Islamic sword that slaughtered 85% of my community. The Seifo in our language, Seif in Arabic. We were killed, forcibly displaced from our ancestral lands. The majority of Syriae live today in the diaspora. More than 80% at least lives in the diaspora, not in their native land. So that leaves us to practice and remain our culture, to be committed to our faith, Christianity, to our ancestral heritage in a place where we actually do not belong. Mesopotamia have well known for you probably, we call it Beth Nahrain, the land of the two rivers, traced back both in faith and history many, many centuries. The Aramaic language spoken by Christ himself is the language we speak today, a dialect of it. Despite all these centuries of conquest and persecutions, we have preserved our faith, our language, and our identity. Our people are divided, unfortunately, due to the church denominations, but the same people have today the Maronite Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, the Melkite Church, Catholic Church, the Syriac Orthodox Church, the Syriac Catholic Church, and the Assyrian Church and the Chaldean Church. Yet we are same common people, common history, common culture and struggle. Today, our survival is under immediate threat, and many once Christian towns or villages are empty. Their people displaced or gone. A call for release of Suleiman Khalil. This is most recent call. 8 Swiss parliamentarians filed this also. At the moment, he has been detained since years back. He was the former mayor of, or in the governorate of city of Sadat in Homs. He fought against Daesh, ISIS, but the new regime in February took him in custody, and still we don't know where he is, and we would like to raise this topic to you. So we call upon all human rights and international human rights organizations, both in Europe and abroad. What we need from your side, the European, is political empowerment. Europe and the international community must recognize and engage Christian political representatives such as the Syriac Political Party for Assyrian, Aramean, Chaldean, Syriac as a legitimate stakeholder in this battle. Support the Levantine National Council in Syria and the Syriac Union Party, which safeguard pluralism, equal citizenship, and Christian participation in the reconstruction of New Syria. At the same time, we advocate for the autonomy of the Nineveh Plains and committed to the democratic self-administration in northeast Syria. We seek political support first and foremost for our parties and political movement, because it is our responsibility as political leaders to demand the right, the political right and constitutional right, while our churches provide our religious leadership. The security is a great issue. We need support for community-based protection forces as local police forces under civilian oversight, provide training, equipment, intelligentsia or defensive purpose, establish safe zones and rapid response mechanism in region as at risk. We need strengthened international monitoring attacks on Christians all over, including Nigeria, but of course in Iraq and Syria, of course, in primary. We need your economical support in order to be able to realize some of these defense lines. So please help our civic NGO organization in order to reach the political means. I would like to finalize this by saying something. The protection of Christians is something that would stabilize the region and reduce refugee. We will be empowered as communities, and we can therefore also resist radicalization. We will strengthen the long-term peace. We will support models like the Levantine National Council or the Syriac Union Party, and the Nineveh Plains autonomy would be demonstrating a coexistence in Middle East, where democracy could be achieved. This is not charity we ask for. This is justice, consistency, and moral responsibility. Stand with us in words, in actions, so that the Syriac and other Christians can survive in their ancestral land, and so that Europe remains true to their values. And I would like to raise some warnings also that I think would be maybe reason to questions. There is a common agreement, more or less, in Western world. My enemy's enemy is my friend. So this is a great warning for us as Europeans to understand we should have friends who have same values and who are friends with us, not enemy with somebody else. Friend with us. Secondly, which I feel I must say here as well, when European or Western parties seek alliances in Middle East, they tend to do the mistake to watch the left-right scale of politics. So conservative groups, matches conservative groups in Middle East, and those are the extremist groups today. So we need to bear this in mind as well as warning. And the elephant in the room, unfortunately, it is Islam right now. As a religion, not as people, but also as individuals who are extremists to follow Islam according to its hadithas and its Quran, where it clearly is against and need to conquer the rest of the world. And thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I hope there will be some question we can answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, dear friend Metin. Before I turn to the next speaker, I have a question. You have mentioned the genocide in Turkey now. I will say in Turkey now, because before 700 years wasn't Turkey. But I still wonder that one of the worst genocide which the human being experience still denied from not from Turkey, that's not my problem, but from so-called Western countries, which they call themselves as a support of the human rights and the democracy. Can you explain that to us, please?
Well, I mean, there is a fact. I am today political activist or working for NGO. I was also politically engaged in Sweden, where I live since 50 years back.
Just as a victims, because your grandmother, grandfather, grandfamily
yes,
was victims.
Yeah,
please.
So that is the reason. I mean, the reason I live in Europe, or my people live in Europe, is due to the fact of the 200-year persecution I mentioned in different ways. The genocide of 1915 is the biggest wound in our mind that we remember most of all, because it was not far away. I met my grandmother and my grandfather who survived. So they told me their stories. And I had the chance, or maybe the misfortune, to hear those stories. But it still hurts, and it's a wound, and it's killed our identity. We would be, at least in Turkey, close to 7 million if those who were killed, and I do not exaggerate, I take 200,000 people, 100,000 young girls, 100,000 young men married with at least 7 to 8 or 9 children. You can count out today, they would be 12 million at least, in the way our demography looks like. My mother and father had 11 children. So being conservative in that sense, pro-life. But when the question is risen here, it's very interesting to be in different political platforms. We are pro-life, or next word would be against life, but you don't say that. You say at least pro-abortion. We are pro-life that in reality doesn't even start to exist. But we are not pro-life that exists in front of us. The community of Christians in the Middle East. I left my party as a protest in a written open letter to my, at that time, Prime Minister of Sweden, because he didn't follow his promise in the political rally before the election that he would acknowledge in governmental position. So I was also candidate to European Parliament 2014. I left everything the same second he denounced that he could not recognize it when he had the governmental position. So the relation between Turkey, which many European countries look in terms of transactions and economy, is very short term. But I think European countries define this as long term. The long term would be the Khalifa of Europe then, probably not European. The short term is today, and this is Iran, Turkey, are two nations that really produce a lot of extremism and proxy wars in the Middle East, and also today we see the effect in Europe.
Thank you, dear friend. I turn to our next speaker, Father Benedict. I knew you very well. We met many times, but I think you are a very non-priest who spent many years of his life protecting Christian and fighting Christian persecution. I would like to ask you a question because you begin. Yes, Father Benedict, once we talked 3 years ago, I think, in our annual meeting in Frascati, and I asked you something, I will repeat it now. It's written in Bible, not from me. The Lord said us, don't be afraid from those who killed your body, but be afraid from those who killed your soul and body. You are European, you are Western man, and you have a very close contact with the Christian. You are alive a lot of history and speak with many Christian, persecuted Christians, especially in Iraq, I think, when I am not wrong. What do you say? In my point of view, I think in Western country we are alive, just we have heard a lot that what our Lord warned us. But please tell us about your experience also. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you for calling me young. That's the first time I've heard that in quite a while. I'm actually not as I know I look very young, but I'm not. I'm 62. It's important. I mean, I'm very also grateful for those of you who are here, but it's kind of a little parable in a way of everything we're talking about that, unfortunately, this room is not very full now. This discussion, which is so important, thank you for those who are here, but it's kind of, as I said, a little parable, really, of the Western world and certainly the Western Church, that the persecution of Christians is not really high on the agenda. They did a poll in the US a few years ago, a Catholic charity did a poll of American Catholics, practicing Catholics, in a list of 1 to 5. What was the most important thing for American Catholics? And persecution of Christians came bottom at number 5. Above were things like climate change, which, as one of my friends said, when someone is about to chop your head off, you're not very worried about air conditioning. So climate change may be important, but it's less important. No, very simply, Manuel, yes, I've been going to Iraq and Syria and Lebanon for 10 years. I remember John Paul II, St. John Paul II, saying, way back when I was young, talking about the church breathing with 2 lungs. He always spoke about the church breathing with the lung of the East and the lung of the West. He was then, of course, more referring to the church here and in Eastern Europe, the church as it was behind the Iron Curtain. But for us, really, we have to know in the West that the church is not just one body, but it did breathe and does breathe with 2 lungs. And when we in the West don't understand that or don't care about that, we have a problem, and also we suffer. Western Christians cut off from their roots, as you said in your introductory talk, this is where we come from. That's just not just romantic. We are Semitic people. We are Christians, are the cradle of Christianity. So if we don't care about our brothers and sisters, this is a theological point as well. Scripture tells us we are one body. That's not just nice, that's the truth. My brother or my sister in Iraq or Syria or Nigeria or Pakistan who is suffering is my brother or sister, not in blood, in the spirit, much more important. And if we don't care and do something about that, then we cannot call ourselves Christians. So that's what began to motivate me. And then the second thing is to keep Christians in their homelands, to avoid migration. The Middle East without Christians will be a terribly empty place. We must keep Christians in their homelands, support them, encourage them, pray for them. But principally, it is about getting the Western Church and the Western world, but the Western Church to remember their roots, where we come from, and they are still there. They've been there from the beginning. They've been persecuted, certainly since the time of Islam, and being very persecuted now, but we must support them to stay.
Thank you, Father Benedict. I have to say, I was witness when His Excellency Prime Minister of Hungary, Mr. Viktor Orbán, decided to build a state secretary to help persecuted Christians. I was wondering, I was on the table meeting with the many patriarchs from the Orient, and I witnessed daily how the Hungarian aid, led by my very close friend Tristan Atzbay and the team, how they help the Christian around the world, but also especially in the Middle East. What make me happy, what really make me happy, it's not the help, but how the Mr. Viktor Orbán, the Prime Minister, very clearly, when he was attacked, he said, yes, there is many victims, but as Christian we have to help our brothers and sisters. Dear friend, what can you tell us about this thing and the daily work by helping persecuted Christians?
Dear Manuel, thank you. You said the most important part of my message, so thank you indeed. I am personally glad to be with you here this afternoon on behalf of my boss, State Secretary Tristan Atzbay, who is responsible for the Hungary Helps program, so that Hungarian government program that is focusing on the aid to persecuted Christians. He had to change his program and cannot be here today because he had to join Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's delegation to Washington, D.C. And that is relevant for our discourse today because it shows that the issue and the cause of persecuted Christians is relevant not only for the Hungarian-American relations, but for the United States foreign policy as well. And we have listened from President Trump and Vice President Vance how they consider very much important religious freedom in the world. President Trump recently stood up very decisively for Nigerian Christians. So it's a good sign and a good message for all of us. But how did Hungary start all this? You said it clearly. The Middle East Christians had a very important role in that. But I can say that there are some issues of principles and there are some practical motives also behind what Hungary started. The questions of principle are that Hungary is a Christian country. We drew up our own new constitution recognizing the importance of Christianity for Hungary, which is a simple recognition of history, legacy, identity, but also of the fact that the majority of the Hungarian population declares themselves as Christians. And if we are Christians, if we are a Christian country, we decided as a political choice to build our country based on the principles and the values of Christianity, then we shall do something for those Christians who are persecuted somewhere in the world, especially in the Middle East. This is a question of principle, of course. And here come also the practical reasons. The security and the stability of the Middle East affects directly the stability and the peace of Europe. Okay. And Christian communities are a vital factor for the stability of the Middle East, as you already stated it clearly. So this is a simple recognition of facts. Therefore, it is quite logical to start to do something for preserving the Christian communities in the Middle East. And the term community is important because many of us in the Western world will speak clear words and very important discourses about the importance of religious freedom as an individual right. But here, we are not talking about me having the right to pray closed in my room back at home. But we are speaking about Christians as a community to survive, persevere, being able to live in their country, in their places of origin, in their places of origin. This is what all our peoples, all our nations desire for themselves as well, to be able to live in peace, keeping our own identity in our places of origin. So, if we wish that for us, ourselves, then we shall help other communities endangered to reach this same goal. So this was the factor that prompted Prime Minister Viktor Orban and the government of Hungary to start a dedicated aid program. But it started by personal encounters. And Manuel already told that it was a Frascati meeting with some Middle East church leaders who talked about the terrible situation caused by the ISIS, so-called ISIS, in Iraq, Syria, and other countries in the Middle East. But even before that, did you know that when exactly 10 years ago, the 21 Coptic martyrs were beheaded in the Libya seashore? It was a public outrage worldwide. It happened that Viktor Orban, our prime minister, went to Egypt on an official visit right after that. And he wished to meet the families of those victims. It was a simple human gesture of solidarity. But he asked them, can we help you in some way? And the relatives of these important martyrs that we all venerate as saints and we all recognize, the families told us, well, we lost the breadwinner. How can we live as a family? Could you just buy us cows and sewing machines in order to keep up our daily lives? And the Hungarian government spent some 500 euros per family to buy cows and sewing machines for them. That was maybe the Proto-Hungary Helps program. But it is important because it shows that you don't need to build up huge projects with millions of euros of budget in order to help concrete families. And often, a little help can improve the concrete life of concrete people. And of course, many times when there are big massacres, big attempts, and horrible things happening to Christians in the world, there is public outrage, there are solidarity movement, but we often forget about the families of the victims, the survivors, the communities of those victims. Yet they need our help. And this is what Hungary Helps program wants to do, reaching out directly to those communities, focusing on them, partnering directly with church leaders, because they know the concrete people. They are on the ground, and they can be very effective in reaching out to them. The Middle East, as our Prime Minister also told expressly sometimes, is very important for Christian communities. When the Middle East will be without Christians, that will be the end for Christianity worldwide. He said that, but maybe on a theologically more correct way, we can say that that would really endanger our own Christian communities in the other parts of the world. Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, dear ladies and gentlemen, we have seen in the last 25 years the fall of many so-called nationalist dictatorship, as in Iraq, Libya, and now in Syria, and the rise instead this dictatorship, a religious dictatorship. And I have, since many years, since at least 30 years, always in my speech said, Western country, you have to wake up for two reasons. The first one is if you don't wake up, we will alive soon a Middle East without Christianity and Christian people. And the second one, if you do think that this thing happened there in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon, you are very naive, because the impact will someday, one day, reach you also. I turn to you, dear friend Gicquel. I apologize. I'm in many things good, but not in French language. I apologize when I say the name not correct. I know also that your organization, I experienced that in my visiting Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, how active you are there and helping by building mainly schools and hospitals and also rebuild church. What can you tell us about this?
Thank you very much. I think that to know what we can do against persecution, we should know what persecution we're speaking about. Because in each different case, in front of each different threat, there is a separate answer. So when we speak about persecution, what are we speaking about? Of course, we think about these terrible images of these 21 martyrs in Libya from the Coptic Church. We think about all the terrible images of the Islamic State we saw in 2014, 2015, 2016, and all these images. But it's much broader than that. First, you have persecutions from the states directly. You spoke about these dictatorships, religious dictatorships, sometimes not, because it's not only about Islam. Of course, they're having a contest with the communists to know who is going to persecute the most the Christians around the world. So we can speak about persecution from the states, like Turkey until today, let's say it, China, Nicaragua, France, we can put them in the list. And many other Western countries as well that we could put in the list of persecuting Christians from the state. Persecutions from sectarian groups. Directly, we can see that, for example, in Nigeria, the government is trying to do what it can to preserve the Christians, but militias, Islamic radicalized militias are attacking the communities. As we said, we can see that in Pakistan as well, in which the government is trying to do what it can, but it's quite failing in some remote areas. It can be economical conditions that can be created by the area they are living in, but at the same time, by terrible economical wars that the countries and neighboring countries are waging against Christian populations, and wars, and basically wars. That's what we saw. It can be official open wars or civil wars. Official wars, as we saw in Armenia, with the attack of Azerbaijan, that was not mainly religiously motivated. It was more ethnic. And always linked with Turkey, of course, or civil war, as we saw in Iraq and Syria, in which the main reason the Christians were killed was not firstly directly against them, but because they were, and they still are in Syria today, in the middle of a chaotic situation that has been created by the game of the powerful nations who tried to play God in those countries, and who created a terrible chaos, and I think we will speak maybe a bit more about Syria afterwards. So in front of that, in every situation, there is a different response. It can be, of course, first emergency help. When you arrive and you try to imagine a future for a Christian on their land, of course, you will not start to speak about creating a Catholic university in the middle of a huge chaos and a draw, for example, for some time because of the climate, or sometimes in front of terrible killings, etc. So, of course, first you try to save them, you try to feed them, you try to house them. You try to warm them when it's too hot, too cold, etc., etc. And then you can start to think about their future. When we are speaking about poverty, of course, economical development, and we are working a lot on that with Father Benedict Kiely, economical development, and you spoke about that a lot, about those families in Egypt, is the key, is the clue. You cannot imagine a future on your land without having the means to raise a family, to have the means to educate them, to have the means to feed them, etc., etc., etc. So economical development is very, very, very important. It can be at the scale of the community, but it can be at the scale of the family itself, and it's really the key to help the people to stay on their land. After that, of course, access to education, especially for Christian populations. We see that for Christian population, especially in the Middle East, it's very, very, very important, and they cannot imagine a future if they do not access quality education, and they are very focused on the future of their children. And that's something we don't see in every culture, and that we don't see in every religion, but the Christians are particularly seeing education and transmission to the next generation as something fundamental in their communities and in their families. So education is really very important, and of course all the in countries of war, infrastructures, reconstructions, and it takes a lot of partnerships as we have. It takes a lot of funds, and it takes a lot of efforts, to rebuild entire cities. Now we will be starting to work in the upcoming month on Holy Land, and of course you can see on the images how much effort it takes to rebuild all this destruction, the massive destructions. But to conclude my my intervention, what we can see is that I spoke a lot about the reasons of the persecutions, about what we can do materially in front of the persecution. But why do we do it, and why do we continue to do it, and why I've been doing it for 10 years and I will do it for 10 years? It's because what you find in the rebels, it's very, very strong, very, very believing communities. And you cannot imagine what we earn ourselves by going there and by working with them. They have been doing that for 2,000 years. They will do that for 2,000 years. And when you arrive and you see them, they suffered everything for generations, and tell you, help us to stay, we will not leave our land, and we will never accept the conditions and the terms that these dictators, that these sectarian groups are trying to impose on us. So pray for us and help us as much as you can, but anyway, we will stay there and we will fulfill our reason to be on this land by God, is to testify of the presence of Christ in the middle of this terrible situation, and we will do it. So that keeps us going.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as a man who was born in Syria, and through my now 36 years living in Vienna and working for our church and for Christians in the Middle East, through my talk to all patriarchs and bishops there, and also the people on the street, and from Egypt to Iraq to Syria and Lebanon, I can assure you, before this so-called invasion of Daesh, there were no Christian family poor. They are all, without any exception, wealthy, very wealthy family. Some of them became poor because of the invasion, but what can I assure you? All ask me, yes, help us economical, but please ask them to ensure our safety. All what they ask Christian there, please, we want to live in peace. That's what they ask me to ask the politicians in the Western. That's why I raised the question, who come from you answering. I couldn't understand this eagerness, rush to invite the new president of Syria, Bashar, when daily is attack on Christian in Damascus or other cities in Syria. Is there any politicians from the Western ask this President al-Shara, what's happened with the Christian there? He was by Macron, on Monday will be in the White House, and. Who can explain that, why that happened? All what they wish the Christian to live in peace there.
Maybe I should. I mean, I told you the wrong we are doing here in Europe when putting the left-right scale, political scale, implement that in the Middle East, then you end up conservative powers or the extremist group. Mr. Jolani, or his name Namdugar al-Shar, as he wants to do now, be called, he was one of those very radical right-wing politicians that actively needed to fight.
It was the Trump administration who put $10 million of.
Yes, of course.
Now he invited him in White House. It's such of the...
The problem is you give chance to the persecuted to become the persecutor now. And I've said this, and I know I have some Muslim friends who doesn't like this, but the saying of Allahu Akbar comes from my language, Allahu Rabo, very similar. God is great. Today, in Islamism, it's used Allahu Akbar as a revenge tool. Now it's my turn to revenge. Now it's my turn. Allah is with me, now it's my turn. And this we need to be very careful with, because all people have right to their religion, even Muslims, of course. But Muslims need to accept that other people also have right to their religion. And we cannot see that, and this is European politics and Western politics need to request that. When a Muslim community builds a mosque in Europe, totally okay. But can a Christian community build a church in those countries and still nobody asks why? And still we send them, we empower them more than send them only money because they have money enough.
Maybe I'm exaggeration when I say, you don't agree with me, but I think the reason is economic interest, not about the Christian community or other community. That's my point of view. I think we have a little time to ask maybe one of the audience want to ask our speaker. Please, go ahead. Please, do you have a microphone?
Yes, thank you very much. I would very much like to get from you gentlemen some statistical data that always speaks volumes. How many Christians there are right now in the Middle East, how many were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. If you could maybe speak on that topic. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
Unfortunately, there is no correct number for but I can't tell you because for a short time I spent a seminar with His Eminence Cardinal Pizzapalla, the Patriarch of the Catholic Church, Latin Catholic Church in Jerusalem. He told us by seminar that in the Holy Land, for example, the number in the last 2-3 years came to about, in Gaza, they were about 20,000, now they are about 700 persons. In Syria, I can say it because I am good informed in Iraq. In Iraq, for example, before the invasion of Daesh, they were 2,200,000. As His Eminence Cardinal Saku told me, the head of the Chaldean Church, now they are not more than 400,000. In Syria, the number of Christians were about 2 million. Now they are about 600,000. As I said, this is not number which I can emphasize. I said it's not, but this is what the church leader told me.
It's the World Wildlife Fund has levels of danger of extinction for animals like frogs or something like that. Christians, for example, in Iraq, are now if they were animals, are in the World Wildlife Fund list of being in danger of extinction. They've got to that level. But across the Middle East, apart from, of course, Egypt, we mustn't forget our wonderful brothers and sisters in Egypt, who actually the Egyptian government won't allow the true figures. There are many more Egyptian Christian, Coptic Christians than the government allows to be recorded. They say sometimes there's 11 or 12 million Copts. In fact, there's at least 20 million, if not more. But the Copts are also clever. They keep their mouths shut. But unfortunately, in Iraq and Syria, Lebanon, because they're leaving mainly for economical reasons. This is the sort of underlying thing, as well as was addressed by various of our panelists, that if it's not active persecution, the economic persecution that everybody suffers, Muslims as well, but there is also the squeezing persecution, for example, in Iraq, in Nineveh Plains, the Shia militias who surround all the Christian towns now buy property, they won't go to the Christian shops, etc., etc. So it's a silent demographic change, but the numbers are bad across the Middle East except for Egypt.
Thank you. Yes, please,
I would
go
like
ahead.
to say that 1913, in what was Ottoman Empire at that time, about 35% were counted to be Christians, Armenian and Assyrian Chaldean community. Today in Turkey, we have 0.02% Christians in Turkey. And in Iraq, less than 300,000. And the last figures I saw, when the Iran against Iraq war started, there were close to 2.2 million, yes. 2003, 1.5 million. Next time after Daesh now, 300,000 left.
Thank you. Is there, we have still one, yes, one question, please. Andrei, go ahead.
Andrei Kolarek, Ladislav Hanus Institute. So there has been some chilling speeches. My question is, what would you have us do? What can a conservative organization with a mission that is focused on perhaps some other key aspect do? What can a conservative political party that has a few MPs in a country like Slovakia do? What would you have us do?
So I will just answering as I always, in conclusion, my speeches say it, we don't need weapons there in Middle East. Just follow the truth. Be courageous and say it clearly and very courageously. Your Christian brothers and sisters in the Middle East suffering under unprotectable persecution. Say it. Go in the media without weapons. Don't fight. Just say the truth. Please.
Yes, as I was saying earlier, a lot of persecutions and a lot of pressure put on the Christians in the Middle East, pushing them to go away, is caused by the play of the powerful nations. Our nations in the West, either they are small or big, they are still Western, wealthy nations compared to the rest of the world, and we are all playing this game. It's important for us as politically involved actors to testify of what is happening and to speak out and to say the truth everywhere, in the medias, in these conferences, in the churches, in front of the governments, in front of our families, everywhere, in the schools, everywhere, and to explain to our nations that their interests are fundamentally to help those populations that are endangered because of their games. And that when we are always only thinking about our economical interests, we should think about something more, something further And you know, for that we work a lot with our politicians. For instance, I see in the room Nicolas Bay, who is a member of parliament, who worked a lot on the subject. We are working together on a lot of subjects. He's just coming back from Lebanon, and you know, terrible things are happening in the south of Lebanon. He went himself to see through our kind of organization, to see what we can do and to raise awareness in the European Parliament, in our own parliaments, and to speak out and to say the truth, because nobody else will speak about it if we don't do it.
Metin?
So since Daesh appeared, 2014 until 2019, I've been 9 times in Iraq. 6 of those times I passed over to Syria. So I've seen Daesh on the ground while being strong and capture and conquer different places and then defeated. There are 2 requests, primarily from my friends, my sister organization in Syria. 1, political empowerment. Please do empower us politically, put us in a position to sit with this kind of leadership that today are entitled to lead the country, so we can bravely say to them, we do not accept this. We want our rights, we want to govern ourselves. We are not afraid of saying that. Secondly, specifically now in what is happening in, as they call it in Arabic, Wadi al-Nasara, which is a shameful way of telling people you are Christian, Nasara. We are Christian. Wadi al-Masihiyun, the valley of the Christians, approximately 500,000-600,000. They need immediate support for self-defense. So local police, establishing local police. We have young boys, men, women who are ready to take this responsibility. But we need to be according to the law, where the Ministry of Syria today is administrating the police force. So we need local police force from the people on the ground. These 2 are very important for us.
Because I will give you the last word, I just want to add something for the politician in the whole Western country. I understand very well the interest of improving your economical situation. But it's the matter of lives from your brothers and sisters there. Please, it's the last word for you.
Thank you. I would like to directly address the question of Mr. Kolárik and want to commend the Ladislav Hanus Institute for putting this issue on the agenda of today's conference, because this is the most important thing to begin with. To recognize the problem, to recognize the issue, to put it on the table and raise awareness, also in our countries here in Central Europe. Even if you are a smaller organization, a smaller party, independently from the internal political situation where you are, you can do something. Put this issue on the table, work together, cooperate with very worthy institutions, organizations, some of them are here with us today, help them to operate on the ground and join the solidarity initiatives that the churches are also bringing forward. So you can make the difference in your own country, here in Slovakia, and in our other countries in Central Europe, even in smaller countries, smaller organizations with not too much economic resources. Thank you for putting this issue on the table today, and thank you for the possibility of speaking about this today.
And also thank you from me, for you, our speakers today, for reaching us. Please join me to applaud them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Teraz bude nasledovať prestávka. Pozývam vás občerstviť sa do foaje, dať si kávičku a nezabudnite potom aj navštíviť stánok Inštitútu Ladislava Hanusa, ako aj stánok nášho partnera European Conservative. Vidíme sa o 17:00. Ďakujeme.